Hi, everybody. I'm John Self. Welcome to Office Hours. We were distracted yesterday. We had some studio issues with our restreaming service, so we're glad you're with us today. We've got, I think, a good program setting up, and I think it's important stuff that we talk about. It's really talks about how people are struggling with the job search market, and there are certain things you really have to do. One of the things that I keep telling people is, be a high achiever. Mediocre people don't like high achievers, and high achievers do not like mediocre people. And Nick Saban used to say that at Alabama, but I think that's universally true. And sometimes people that are looking for a job and they're being very aggressive in promoting themselves, they get affected by the crowd mentality. And I saw that a lot in the Philippines when I was doing overseas work there. And they had a lot of newspapers, and if somebody really started taking off and getting real popular, it was like the whole crowd wanted to pull them down. So we're going to talk today about things you can do, how you can do them, and keep yourself positioned to be competitive in the job market, but also be authentic. Welcome to Office Hours. Hi, everybody. John Self here. What is your goal? Are you prepared to do what it takes? Now, that is, I think, central questions. People say, I want to work I want to do a lot of travel. I want to like to be a national marketing manager. I want to be able to go coast to coast and deal with high impact clients. And that's great. And I got to do that for many years. That was one of my goals in life. And I got to do that. But, I got lucky. I got lucky because I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Unfortunately, today I could never, ever replicate the career that I had beginning in the mid 70s. I started off as a crime writer and investigative reporter for newspapers in Tyler and Lubbock, and then at the Houston Post, and was there for several years covering the cops and writing investigative pieces. And went on to Herman Hospital and got some great experience there doing helicopter ambulance programs, and then set up the next 13 or 14 programs nationally, traveling east to west, just having a great time and doing impactful work. And I felt really, really blessed to be able to do that. Went on to do work in not-for-profit hospital system management and turnaround projects, and started a search firm. I started two search firms that were both successful, and started my coaching practice in 2018. Now, again, today, given what we know about what's happening with AI, with the automation of talent acquisition, the chances that I could do that again today are very, 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 very slim. And so what you have to do today is you have to plan more and be more intentional. And that's that's the kind of the underlying theme we're going to talk about today. Here's our agenda. When the computers take over, what is that going to look like? Well, we've talked a lot about that. I still think that people are trying to kind of come to get their brain wrapped around that. And I think every day that goes by, we get a little more clarity. The next thing is, look, when you look for a job today with one of the worst executive management job markets I've seen in decades, say maybe 2008, 2009, you're going to literally be competing against thousands. Now, the client's simply not going to bring in 1,000 people, but that may be the original pool. And with a lot of organizations now using scanners, they can scan LinkedIn thousands of profiles in a matter of minutes and come up with a couple of hundred people that then they can winnow down from there. So you have to learn how to compete against a lot of people, and you can't let it get you down. Then finally, we want to talk about steps to boost your visibility and enhance your brand and win the day. Because if you're not winning the day, you're not getting employed, and that's kind of what it's all about. So let's move on. When the computers take over, I think you're already seeing recruiting it's being dehumanized. We talked about decluttering, yeah, deleveraging, the debt, all those things. We're now seeing dehumanizing recruiting. A lot of the initial sourcing, and for years, it's been the resumes. Um, it's been I'm sorry about that. I don't know if that's an emergency call or not, so I'm just going to wait and see if I get a voicemail. Um, it's we're seeing that now with applicant tracking systems, and now we're seeing it in sourcing. Your online brand will become the new relationship, and I think that's really, really important. You have, because they're in probably 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years, you're not going to have um, a resume in the traditional sense. And I think that that's just something that you're just going to have to get used to. And if anything, that's going to kind of make it a little bit easier. And why is that? Because you're not going to have to be in a position of constantly customizing your resume. It's not going to be right away, but that's going to happen within the next 3 to 5 years as our organizations, go through the process of doing more and more automated online sourcing. And so that's kind of what's happening, and it's going to be kind of uh, that's kind of be something that we have to deal with. I just want to be sure that wasn't an emergency message from the chairman of the board. They're going to use the scanners instead of resumes. So that may mean you don't have to constantly upgrade your resume. Now, you still have to for the foreseeable future, but in the future, they're going to use the LinkedIn profile to identify you. You won't even present a resume until you've been requested to come in and let them do further evaluation, or that they ask you to submit it online. You still will have to customize, but you're slowly going to see change. So your online brand will become the new relationship. Recruiting used to be a bunch of guys in white shoe firms having really good Rolodexes, and they got paid well for having those good Rolodexes. They knew where the talent was in any given industry. And that was all called relationship marketing, relationship recruiting. Well, today, you're now seeing technology take over some of those relationships. It will be the new relationship within the next 3 to 5 years. It's already changed so much, so dramatically, so fast from the time I started recruiting in the mid 90s. And then when I started my second firm in 2010, we're light years from where we were then. Hell, when I first got started, I remember the biggest innovation was email. I mean, we used fax machines and telephones before that. Fax machines were big time technology. And then we had email, and none of us really knew how to deal with PCs. And we spent half our time on the phone with tech support just trying to get the email to work. Now it's seamless. And as we got more sophisticated, the change, the reliability, the speed, everything got faster. Well, we're seeing the same thing with AI. Online branding, networking will require more attention. It's going to move the process along faster, but in order for you to be visible and viable, you're going to have to spend more time, budget resources to be sure that you are very, very visible, or you may never be visible to recruiters. Now, the competition for the jobs, that's not going to ease either. If in the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see more intense competition as organizations lay off. Over the last, I guess, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, there have been more than 2,500 layoffs in healthcare alone. We expect to see additional layoffs after the first of the year. I think the Fed today elected not to lower interest rates any further, and that will have a ripple effect on the economy. So we're seeing a lot of things happen. It has nothing to do really with the election. Whoever took office was going to have to deal with a slowing economy. So if anybody said, well, we've had a soft landing, that may be a little bit premature, whatever soft landing really means. That means soft landing may mean there are only 100,000 people lose their job rather than 1 million people. Maybe that's the definition. Anyway, competition is going to be intense. You have to have an online brand. You have to be intentional. You have to be disciplined in order to, get the work done so that you can be competitive. So what does this mean to you? Well, it's really easy. What this means to you is that you're going to have to be more competitive. You're going to have to spend more time with your career. And here's why. I was with some people the other day and we were reviewing some material, and several AI people who are very strong in the healthcare industry said, we believe, and we've talked to some people across the broader economy, that the impact of AI could surpass electrification in the United States. So just hit the pause button for a minute and think about that. When Thomas Edison and they first, started putting out electric light bulbs, electric street lights, and I think one of the early cities was Los Angeles, actually, before it was really the golden city of the West. They were one of the first cities to have electrified lights. London had it. It was novel, and then it started happening, and it moved across pretty fast in relative terms. Today, it's something we take for granted. This skyline indicates lights, electrification, literally changed this country, changed business, changed our personal lives, our living, everything. They're now saying AI could have the same impact, on our society as electrification. And you have to then boil that down. What does that mean for my career? Well, if you're not concerned and if you're not thinking, okay, I need to spend more time researching this, understand this, because when it does reach that tipping point so that you can't even consider doing it the way you used to do, find a job, manage your career, it'll be too late. So you have to move now and get comfortable with the whole process. You must change your perspective. Somebody asked me what happened in the campaign to the Democrats, and I said, well, they had today issues, but they were running with the coalitions that they've always run with in the past. So they had new issues looking forward, but they were actually campaigning in the rearview mirror. And you can't afford to do that with your career. You cannot have good ideas, understand how change is occurring, but then have your default position in the rearview mirror. Your career will not advance if you rely on that approach. You have to have new technology. You have to be up to date on what's happening with technology and how it affects the talent acquisition business. And you have to do it in a forward-looking way. Now, is it going to happen overnight? No, but it's happening really fast. And so instead of maybe 10 years, we're talking about 3 to 5 years. So who are you going to let you define your success? I've sat in on a lot of these self-help things, usually the free ones. I'm not going to spend that kind of money. But, they come in and say, now, this is what you have to do to be successful. And this is how you have to believe. And if you just clear your mind and do this and do that, you will be successful. Well, they, without telling you, are really defining in their educational programs, in their rah-rah, pump them up live events where you have 4,000 or 5,000 people cheering and standing on their chairs. They're really setting the boundaries and setting the arena for how this success is going to be defined. And that is a really, really bad idea. I'm not against self-help. I'm not against going to a meeting and I'm against spending a lot of money, but going to a meeting and getting all torqued up and feeling good about who you are and have confidence and get some clarity. But I'm not in favor of somebody saying, this is what success is, and if you don't do it this way and subscribe to our program and pay us the check, you are a loser. And you get that opinion sometimes if you've ever been to one of those meetings. So don't allow some self-help guru to define you or shame you because your ambitions don't match what they think they should be. Now, as a coach, I can tell you, I have to really check myself. Why? Because I see the changes coming. I've always been pretty good at that. And I realize that it's going to take more discipline. It's going to take more intentionality. It's going to take more time across the board. And so I would tell you that, those things are facts. And, but as a coach, sometimes you want to sit back and say, you have to do it. If you don't do it, you're not going to get ahead. Well, that's just nuts. You have to decide what works for you. How are you going to define success? Don't let somebody put you in a box. You need to say, this is what I want. Not everybody wants to be a CEO. Not everybody aspires to get Jamie Dimon's job at JP Morgan Chase. And God love them. That's probably a good thing. Some people are just happy to earn a good living, have some decent cars, have a nice house, be able to have their kids, get their kids nice presents, have birthday parties, and take a summer vacation, or maybe even buy a boat or have a lake house or a cabin in the woods for family time. That's their definition of success. They have a good job, they enjoy the work, but they're not motivated by the work. They're motivated by the lifestyle. And that's okay. If that is your goal, you define that. That's important to you. Don't let anybody change it. Me, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, anybody else, this is your life. This is what you want. Now, if you want a career where you achieve everything you're capable of achieving, well, now we're talking about a whole different thing. Now you have to have a plan, and you really need to be very intentional and to realize that you won't reach those goals in this marketplace without being intentional, without being disciplined, without working hard, without having sustained superior performance. If you want to, I always thought it was interesting. People are out of work and they're paying $800 or $2,000, $2,500 to go to one of these big torque 'em up, master classes on clearing your brain, finding your true spirit, all that stuff. People like it. They stand in their chair and it's almost cult-like. Well, that's great, and some people need that. But what I'm saying is, as a coach, I need to let you decide what's important in your life, and then I need to meet you where you are. And I got a really good lesson on that this week. Great client, extraordinarily decent, kind man who is very conservative. He was a little uncomfortable because I was saying, now you really need to do this and need to do this. And I got ahead of myself. As my father used to say, I put the cart in front of the horse. And I had to slow down and realize that where I have to be is I have to meet him where he is. And that's what you want to do, is find a coach that understands what you want and then coaches you to that level. It's not my career, it's your career. It's not my goals to make, it's your goals to make. Do you need a career plan? I think that's really smart. Because I think if you really want to achieve a lot, if your goal is to, make $250,000 a year, yeah, you're probably going to need that. But if your goal is to have a good job and you're in an industry where you have some flexibility, so if you get laid off, you can go find a similar job making similar money someplace else. That's great. But if you have a career and you want to be a system CEO or a manufacturing CEO of a Fortune 500 company or run a division, you're probably going to have to be more focused. And you don't need to let anybody define your story for you, whether you're just a lifestyle goal or whether you're a really hardcore career goal oriented person. You don't need to let somebody else define your story, because you probably won't like what they have to say. Now, as I just, I'm saying, winning is not the same for everyone. And I really realized that I was telling a lot of people, you got to win. If you don't win, you're losing. And I had a person call me last week and said, you shouldn't use winner or loser. That's unfair. And I wanted to say, and I did not, did you give your kids a lot of participation trophies? Well, the fact is, if you go for a job and don't get it, somebody else got it. They win. You lost. The question is this a job you really want? If it is, you really need the job or really want the job, then you have to then shift into gear. What's required of you today? Your lifestyle goals, your work-life harmony balance notwithstanding, what are you prepared to do to get that job today? And if you're not out there with really preparing for your interview, if you're not really rehearsing, if you're not digging into the background of the company, if you're not envisioning what questions you could be asked, the chances of you getting through the interview process successfully are not very good. So if you're going for a job, the time to win, that's it. If you don't change what you're doing and you keep getting rejected, you're not going to win. And it is a zero-sum game. And although I know she didn't like that to hear that, that is a fact of life. And it is more prevalent now because there is so much competition. And that competition is not going to diminish any. Now, process is important. And if you're moving up in your career, you have goals to build a company, work overseas, build a system where you're helping investors in different countries. You want to build a search firm. You want to build a successful coaching practice. You want to build something in a service industry that you can scale and then sell and create a legacy for your kids. Those are all great, but those won't happen in this market. There, you are going to have to be an intentional person. You're going to have to plan it, and you're going to have to execute. Now, the process in finding a job and managing your career is important. There's going to be, you have to have a digital footprint. You're going to have to give some attention to your brand. You're going to have to really work so that you're an interviewer who can compete with today's standards and today's rhythm. Those are all things you have to do. But what's really important is don't let somebody like me or Tony Robbins or some of the other people wank you off and say, you have to do it this way. No, you have to do it the way that works for you. Because if you go in and you're really not comfortable with what you're doing, you're not going to be authentic. So let's help. You need to figure out, get a coach to help you figure out, okay, I need to have a digital brand. I'm not comfortable. So let's try to figure out what I can do and still be comfortable. Okay, that's important. I don't really, I really don't, want to spend a lot of time on my interviewing. I think I'm pretty good. Well, if you're not, then you're probably going to need to either have somebody you can coach yourself. You get somebody to, conduct mock interviews with you. We do that all the time and give people feedback on questions that really apply to their industry or their job level. But you have to do it at your level. Your voice has to be consistent. It has to be authentic, or you won't come across as being an effective leader. You won't be an effective candidate. So the process is important, but how you use that process, how you execute, is going to vary from person to person. If you're in the world of music and composition, there aren't any new notes. Okay. The only thing that makes music different is how you use the notes and how you execute it with piano, guitar, orchestra. All of those things. Nothing is new there, but it's how you put it together and how you advance it will determine whether it's beautiful music that's consistent with who you are, or whether it's kind of raspy stuff and people don't want to be around it. Don't try to be somebody you're not, but to understand the process and develop a communication style that you're comfortable with. And those are things we help people do every day. Now, clarity is absolutely crucial in this market. As somebody told me the other day, and I picked up on it and used this slide, that they felt like when they were going through the process, they felt like they were just in a fog, not mentally, not emotionally, but just trying to understand, what was happening and how they needed to respond. Stumbling in the dark and hoping that everything's going to work out, and that's a happiness killer. So you really have to be prepared. Now you don't have to be somebody who can jump up on the stage and talk 45 minutes extemporaneously to loud applause, but you do have to be able to communicate your value. You don't have to be a shouter, you have to be a good communicator. You got to be who you are. It has to come in your voice. But those are things that it takes time, and you need to get some help to get there. Find out how to tell your story. The people who don't get jobs, usually it's never about their experience. It's almost never about their years, the quality of their experience or where they work. It's generally about they didn't communicate their value effectively. So you can't go in there and be a door-to-door, high dollar salesman if that's not who you are. You can't go in there and be the used car salesman if that's not who you are. So we need to help you define who you are, what's your story, and how you're going to tell it. And it's going to vary from person to person, candidate to candidate. Okay, there are no shortcuts. There's no ditching essential task. Okay, that's something that as a people that are working to improve your career, you advance where you are today, get to that next level. You cannot take any shortcuts. They don't exist anymore. One of the things I would encourage you to do in order to keep from leaving things out or keep from making a mistake is, first of all, finding a job in a home office is not like working from home. Okay, because what you're going to be doing is totally different than your day job. So you need to create a template of what you're going to do daily, a daily template, almost like a schedule. And you want to start off the day by checking the industry news and seeing if there are any layoffs and reading any newsletters from your industry that you can get your hands on to kind of measure the pulse of what's happening. You need to look for opportunities to post things to your LinkedIn profile. Why is posting important? Because when you're posting, People see that you have an activity level, and that this while the scanner may not pick up on any visual post, they will pick up on narrative posts. So when you do post, you want to be able to sure, okay, this is an interesting story. I want to post it. Why do you want to post it? Well, it's interesting. What makes it interesting? Is it consistent with your vision? Is it consistent with your values? Is it going to help you advance your standing in the community anymore, very much? But really, what you need to focus more of your time on is organic post, short mini case studies of where you solved a problem and achieved great results, improved cash flow, improved the time to hire, cost to hire, improved the turnover rate. Anything that has a strong metrics value, that which is something else. People aren't hiring where you worked last or where you got your MBA or how many initials after your name. They are hiring your accomplishments. They are hiring your value. And when they bring you in to interview, you better be ready to talk about, I did this and I did that, and provide specific metric examples of how you achieve that. And before and after, comparisons are dynamite. That's why we harp, and hosanna about keeping a journal so that you can track this stuff. I can't tell you how many times I've asked people, well, tell me about when you were at this organization. Well, that was 3 years ago. Okay. Tell me, what was your turnover? I don't remember. Wow. Just think about that. You're interviewing somebody for $250,000 job and they can't remember what their turnover rate was 3 or 4 years ago. I mean, that's the really bad look. So you need to be defined, need to understand in your industry, what are the verifiable things that people ask about? What is going to make you stand out in the crowd? Everybody's experienced, but not everybody comes with these good, solid metrics, values, examples. You have to have those today. So, you need to go back and try to recreate them without fudging the truth. And you need, sometimes you can change a statement and make it an accomplishment just by thinking about, okay, I don't have any metrics here, but how can I make it sound really well so that they understand my value? That's the kind of prep you have to do. Now, if you're not keeping a journal, stop. Do you enjoy shooting yourself in the foot? Because if you don't keep a journal, you don't keep a record of these important, values-based examples, you're shooting yourself in the foot. Okay, just like networking is your net worth, okay, keeping metrics and keeping a journal it's a bloodline. It's your oxygen supply, because that's what's going to help you continue to elevate, promote your value. So you absolutely have to have that information. So please don't not start keeping a journal. If you want to have some advice, I've been keeping journals for years. I'm happy to talk to you. Why don't you visit my webpage at johngself.com. Go to the bottom of the page, and it has cleverly Talk to John, and I'll be happy to give you some time. But this is so important. Don't not figure this out for yourself or ask for some help. I know you may be an executive with 10 or 15 years experience and you're not keeping a journal. You go, well, I really don't know what to do. And some people are kind of embarrassed to say, I really don't know what to do. Well, what's really worse, what's really embarrassing is not do it and then not be able to then lose the job that you probably should have gotten because you should have gotten because you're experienced and you could do the job. You've done it before, but because somebody else came in with facts and figures and great illustrations of how they added value. Those are usually the people that get the job. And the most talented person in the world only gets the job about 35% of the time. Who gets the job the rest of the time? It's the people who are qualified, but the people who did the best job communicating. So that is one of the essential things that you absolutely have to do, and you have to keep getting better at it, because as the competition intensifies, that the levels that you're going to have, the bar of performance keeps going up. One of the things you also have to do is stay away from AI produced resumes and cover letters. Now, this is, when AI came out and the applicant tracking system was driving people, crazy. People started using the ChatGPT to rewrite their resume and get help putting in the keywords and phrases and all that stuff. Well, when a couple of people are doing it, you're clever. Nobody notices. But when everybody's doing it, Everybody notices. And do you know what HR people are saying with some consistency? We post a job and we may get 200 or 300 applications, and they all sound the same. Their cover letters sound the same. They use the same words, everything. It's like one person wrote 200 applications. Well, one computer did. So what you have to do is appreciate the fact that that's a tool and it might help you with keywords and phrases, but don't use it to create your resume. If you need help, then go get a resume writer, somebody who can show you how to do it and create sort of the core document. You're still going to have to customize it for every job you apply for, and if you don't, you're not going to get picked. But if you can at least start with a document that really represents your value, don't rely on AI. And by the way, people still talk about cover letters. If they're not asking for a cover letter, don't submit one because you don't know how AI is going to read it. And you don't want to get kicked out because it was the AI had a little misunderstanding what it was looking at. If they ask for a letter, then fine, submit it. But submit it, I would probably say, if you're sending it up on the internet, then put the resume, always put it first, upload that first. Okay. The other thing you want to do is look for opportunities to expand your contacts at targeted companies. Targeted companies, what does that mean? Look, if you got a job and you're happy, but you know that you're probably not going to get where you want to be at this organization. There are too many people ahead of you, too many people have been there a long time, too many people making a lot more money than you are. You know that you're going to have to move on to get to where the next level where you want to be, so you can do a better job caring for your family, helping your kids get a great education, providing them some start to help them get started in their lives. And so somebody said, well, I don't want to, be unfair. I said, you have two choices: help them buy a house, or help them get, establish credit worthiness to get an apartment lease, or welcome them back home. So you really need to have targeted organizations. If this doesn't work out, if my company is bought, if I get fired because I did something in a moment of incredible oversight, I did something bad enough to get me fired. Those things happen. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you had a bad day. And people recover from bad days all the time. Redemption is one of the things Americans love the most. But it happens. If you don't have a targeted list of places where you would like to work, if not here, where? You should have a list. It should be 10 or 15, maybe 20 other organizations. And you should have LinkedIn connections into those organizations. And you should have LinkedIn connections to people who are in the related industry, maybe an ancillary company or a sales company that supplies that organization, and know people that work there. Get connected with them on LinkedIn. You're building a mini network, and it is absolutely the best way to look for a future job. And it won't work overnight. You have to start investing now, because it can take time to get it done. So don't sit back and wait. Oh, I just got fired. Oh, hell, what am I going to do? I got a mortgage. I got 2 car payments. I got kids in private school, and I'm going to get 6 months severance. And I don't really want to cash out my retirement plan because I'm going to lose too much money and probably have tax liability. What do I do? Well, what did you do is the question. What did you do before this happened? Be job search ready. You don't have to, you're not looking for a job. You're just planning for the future. And if you want to be a CEO and you can't do that in your own life, I always ask CEO candidates, is this your first time to apply for? Yes. I said, well, tell me about your career plan. Well, I don't have one. But do you have a business plan? Well, I don't do it, but yeah, we have one. I said, well, why wouldn't, if you know it's important in business, why wouldn't you have one for your career? And don't get caught on that issue. Think about it. But the right answer is, I'm going to put together a career plan. And we're going to talk about that more in just a minute. As you're out there networking, look out for market leaders who may have connections in your targeted geographic region as well. Look for executives who you may know and didn't really realize that they were in an area where that you might want to work in the future. A lot of times people interview with organizations only to find out after they get there that they knew people that were working there. Nobody had ever gone to LinkedIn to kind of do a query to find out some of the people that work there. That's bad on you. That's a bad thing to do. If you're interviewing with a recruiter initially on the telephone, print their picture and talk to the picture. But more importantly, review their profile so you can say, did we share a fraternity or sorority together? Do we maybe know some of the same people? You can say, oh, probably not. Well, yes, but there's also a probably might be an opportunity there. So don't not do that. That's the little things that you have to do in today's market. Now, what's really central? How are you going to compete against all these thousands of people? How are you going to stand out from the crowd? How are you going to have the stamina and the emotional drive to keep going when you get turned down? Well, first of all, you got to understand who you are. You got to understand, got my skills down. I know what they are, dead bang, locked up. I know what they are, and I won't have any trouble expressing myself. And what are my strengths? And what's the value that I've delivered with skills and strengths? Now, this is for you to decide. Now, sometimes it's good to have an outsider like me look at your resume and ask you a lot of questions, and you say, this is really important. I go, but what about this down here? There's probably more money here. There was more impact here from an outsider. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, yeah, that's right. Well, why isn't that up higher? Okay. You keep in mind, yeah, the computer's going to read it, but when you're sitting in front of a recruiter, you're there because the computer has gone through the initial screening, and the person who did the initial telephone screening, which is now still a human, but in three to 5 years, it's probably going to be a AI avatar for the screening interviews. You have to understand, they're going to want to see additional information. They're going to see additional value. So please provide them that value. Have a plan. Be intentional. Understand your strengths and skills, understand who you are. Now, when I talk about plan, one of the issues that I invariably get hit with is, oh, I watched a video with Tim Cook being interviewed, and Tim Cook said he did a plan when he was at graduate school. That was a requirement for the class, and he found it one day when he was going through some boxes looking for some personal papers, and it was all yellow, and he read through it, and he said only the first 2 years was accurate. Okay, well, here's what's wrong with that example. First of all, that's a life plan. That's not a job. That's not a career plan. And sometimes, immediately the guy was sort of saying, well, sometimes career planning is overhyped. No, sometimes professors are misguided. They give career planning a bad rap. And Tim Cook was at Duke. I don't know who his professor was, but a changing destination is infinitely better than no clue where you're going. Somebody says, well, I'm not going to plan my career because, it's going to change. Well, you're going to tell your board as CEO, I'm not going to do a plan because everything's going to change within the next year. The board's going to look at you like, who the hell are you and what are you saying? So, yeah, things change. If you are going to be a great CEO, you have to be a good leader, you have to be empathetic, and you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to communicate with people, both in empathy, with support, and sometimes you have to kind of get a little bit firm to get them back on the correct path. But you've got to have a plan. You have to be intentional. You have to have the plan helps you become more accountable. It's all about doing the right thing at the right time every time. That's a phrase that the Alabama players heard in Tuscaloosa day after day, year after year. Nick Saban says that all the time. He says, it's kind of the phrase about discipline. Do the right thing at the right time, every time. Well, that really speaks to finding a job and managing your career. There are right things to do and there are wrong things to do. The right things to do are keep a journal. The right things to do are understand what your value is. The right thing to do is be ready to interview, practice, understand what it takes to be successful today. The right thing to do is have references that can speak to your value proposition, not people that you just know and liked you. I mean, that's good to have, but they need to be able to speak to your value. And if you don't, they're not going to be great references. And today, companies are listening. They're, used to, he's got 3 references. He's good, went good place. Let's just hire him. Let's make an offer. Okay. Today, there's 20 or 30 people that went to a good place, went to a good school, came out of companies that were really well known, and sounds like he was a good person, and so let's hire. They're not doing that now. What they're doing now is they've got so many people applying for jobs or so many people coming in that they can now be very, very picky about what they're going to hire, who they're going to hire, what's going to be the parameters that they're going to be looking for. And always in that mix is value and your ability to communicate yourself. In these events, because the technology is changing things, we are seeing, more precision. We are seeing, layoffs. We're seeing more competition for what jobs are available. We see this just escalating over the years. It's nice to have these do the right thing every time, at the same right time every time. That's nice to know that. It's nice to practice that. But that's a nice saying. You must be prepared to do what it takes to win. What do you want? And are you prepared to do whatever it takes to win? Now, I'm not talking about anything underhanded, clearly. I'm not talking about anything unethical, clearly. But in terms of going through the process to find a job, today there are a lot of demands. And today there's a lot of performance expectation. Today the bar has been jacked up pretty high. Are you prepared to do what it takes to get the job? And in order to do that, you have to understand the process. You have to understand your value. You have to understand, what they're looking for and how you can communicate it effectively by drawing on your experiences and your successes with value-based metrics. You must be disciplined and you must execute. You can know all this stuff, but if you don't execute, you're kind of wasting your time. Okay. How do you compete more effectively when there are thousands of people? This is kind of a recurring theme. Let's carry it forward. A commitment to develop a plan and execute it is really central. And people say, well, I've gotten by without doing it so far. Hey, things are changing. And there are projections all over the mark, but none of them look like, well, it's just going to be back to usual and good and easy and no worries, no harm, no foul. No, I don't know anybody that says that. We're never going back. It's only going to become more intense, and it'll get easier once we adapt to all these changes. It'll become easier, and we'll think, okay, well, it's not so bad. During the transition, as we're learning new rules, new responses, it is hard. It is hard, but you have to adapt or you die. And change, it's inevitable, and revisions are essential. So you need to, when you're planning your journey and thinking about where I am now, I've been here 3 years. It's time for me to begin shifting my focus. I've got to deliver sustained superior performance without fail. But I need to start also taking some time at the night or on weekends to think about, okay, what's next for me? And then sitting back, hoping somebody calls with what's next is a fool's errand. You have to begin building links and connections so that you let people know, hey, I'm interested if you have anything. And if you're in ACHE, you've got that great directory. You have a great Congress coming up after the first of the year. These are all ways to build relationships. You don't go to ACHE, and I'm talking a little healthcare jargon now. You don't go to HCHC without a plan to meet people that might be central to your future plans. Try to see who's coming. They publish a list of people in advance of people that have registered. It's so expensive that most of those people, once they register, they would just as soon have a root canal without Xylocaine and not show up. So to say, these are people, email them because they have email addresses in their directory. Could we meet for just a brief session, one time during the day? Let me know and I'll work my plan. I'll work my schedule to meet with you. Maybe it's outside a meeting room. Maybe it's in the hallway going to coffee. Maybe you have time to have coffee together. Try to make a connection that will help you, not just somebody you knew at college. It's nice to have those meetings, but you can't come and go without having some advancement in terms of your network. Your network is your equity. You gotta invest the time. If you spend $2,300 or $2,400 registering and another $2,000 or $3,000 in tickets, taxi, and other events, and you don't come away strengthening your network, you may be smarter about the industry. You may have a new perspective on how to do stuff, but you haven't done anything for your career. So that's where we get back to discipline. Now, the key here is there something that you need to do, but don't want to do? Can you make yourself do it? Is there something that you want to do, but you know in your heart of hearts, I need to be doing something else over here that's more important for my long-term success. I don't really want to do that. I'd rather go do this other thing that may not be healthy for me or may be risky for me. Can you keep yourself from doing that first thing? Can you keep yourself from doing what you want to do and then focus on the things you need to do? That's part of discipline. And in today's market, that's the level of focus you must have. That's the level of focus you must have. So think about that. Is there something that you know you need to do, but you don't want to do? Can you force yourself to do what you need to do? Is there something you want to do, but it's not what you need to do? Can you force yourself not to do that and go focus on what you need to do? Okay, this is what the market is going to require of you. Okay, you know, and as you run your department, as you deal with people, run the company where you are in hopes of getting a bigger and better job, you have to also think about your performers, sustain superior performance, but also how you treat people, how you lead other people. And you want to lead for the benefit of others, not your benefit. Okay. A lot of people, some of the most self-absorbed what's I've ever run into also said in their interview, I'm a servant leader. And they said nothing else in the interview that would suggest that it wasn't just all about them. So, people pay attention to that now. You could have gotten 10 years ago, you could have said, I'm a servant leader, and everybody would have just said, oh, yeah, servant leader. Oh, how nice. And nobody would have ever followed up on it. Okay, you say that today, you, by gosh, better be ready to really show in the rest of the interview how your servant leadership manifests itself. And you don't say, I'm a servant leader because of this. You just need to be sure that your answers reflect your servant leadership commitment. Now, personally, I think it's one of the most overused words in the business lexicon today. And maybe there's a better phrase that would differentiate you in the marketplace. Clearly, one of the things you don't want to do is be like everybody else. Well, everybody else says it, I'll do it. Why? You don't have to be beat the banging drum. You don't have to be a used car salesman with a sports coat that looks like it's a 57 Chevy in Tupelo, Mississippi that ain't got seat covers. You don't want to be that kind of guy, okay, or that kind of woman. What you want to be is unique, authentic, and somebody that communicates the way you handle yourself, the way you treat people. People understand your values. When you talk about your values, they understand who you are and why what your value is. That's you got to be thinking those terms, not just answering the questions. You have to think about communicating those underlying values that the employers will remember and what they're listening for. You need to be more than just a servant leader label. So, as you're moving forward in your career and everything's going along, you think everything's fine. No stumbling allowed. Your performance has to meet or exceed expectations. And again, a friend of mine, T.D. Smyer, is one of the really great not-for-profit leaders I've ever met. He was really renowned in Fort Worth after he finished his career as a captain in the Navy. He said every time he went before the promotion board, one of their standards was, did he have sustained superior performance? And in today's hyper-competitive role for people who are moving up, who want to move into leadership, you have to be somebody who embodies sustained superior performance. Think about that. If that's a mouthful. It's easy, not even really easy to say, but it's a mouthful. So if you're going to say that, understand what the implications are, because it may be complicated if you say it and then can't live up to it. But that's really where the standard is moving. You've got to be a high performer. You must be a high performer. You must execute, and you must be able to communicate your values. Now, mistakes and setbacks are inevitable. I've had more than my share. Do not allow someone else to define you because of your mistake. Okay. I know people that make mistakes and get fired, and then they kind of pull into their shell. They don't work out with their former employer before they left what would be said about them. And then it was put into the severance agreement. They don't think about that. And so a year later, when they're still struggling to find a job, they don't know that they've been a victim of death by 1,000 cuts. People will talk. People will say, yeah, oh, so-and-so, I heard he's looking for a job. Yeah, he was here. Boy, what happened? I can't say, but ooh, bad. Woo. You know, sometimes, oh, he was real good. Uh, Larry Tyler of Tyler and Company, a search firm that's no longer around, used to say, yes, that's praise with uh, it's just damning with faint praise. Excuse me, that's what he said. Damning with faint praise. So you need to understand. You have to protect your rights. You have to protect your story, and you can't just assume that your former employer is going to do the right thing. You can't assume that they're going to say good things about you, even if you are just the scapegoat. You can't assume that. So you have to be sure it's all tied up in a neat bundle, and your lawyer has to be very, very convincing that you better not deviate from that, or you will hear from us, and we will be asking for a big check. Okay? You need to be so you have to take care when you do have those mistakes. You have to be ready to deal with that. And everybody's going to make mistakes. Not very many people get fired for them. Okay? Because some CEOs view that as an investment for the future. But you have to be sure if that does happen, that you tighten it up, you nail it down so that you don't get hurt later. Because in this marketplace, once something happens, it's hard to get that image off of you. If somebody said, oh, well, I think he had an inappropriate sexual relationship, even if you didn't, gosh, that's the kind of story everybody wants to believe. So it's just so important that you pay attention to these things when bad things happen. And obviously the goal is don't let the bad things happen. And if you're doing the right thing at the right time every time, the chances of that happening are not very good. But not of happening, it's just you're going to probably preempt all that. Okay. Now, even if your job's going well, you still have to be job search ready. If you hadn't been in the market for 5 or 6 years, and suddenly you've been told that at the end of the month, the merger is going to close, and you have been selected not to remain with the organization, even though you've been a top performer. But the guy at the other organization in your role has more seniority, and they're kind of, bailing us out, or they're going to have more seniority in the deal. So we're sorry, but you're going to need to think about moving on. And we'll have a severance package for you. Probably today, it's going to be, even if you've been with the company 4 or 5 years, it's probably not going to be more than 6 months. That's just the way it is right now. Some people are able to get more. But what you need to do, if you're going to be gone at the end of the month, that's not a lot of time to learn what's happening in the marketplace. So my advice is, start understanding today what your value is and have your value brand statement down. That's 250, 300 words, which is essentially talking about your strength and skills, but it's really an answer to that question. Tell us about yourself. Because when they ask that, the employer's not asking you to give a boring rendition of your resume. They're trying to get right to the nub of it. Why should we hire you? You need to have that down. You need to have it committed to your heart, and you need to be able, with a smile and a level of confidence and comfort, to deliver that statement. You may never use all of it at one time. You may use just 50 or 60% of it, but you've got it. And some people said, I gave about 50% of that answer when they first got there and they had the first question with the CEO and the CHRO. And then in the next interview, they asked it a little bit differently, and I used the rest of the answers. Having that information, I was able to use it all day long in different interviews in different situations. Okay, now, when you're in an interview, you got to sell yourself, and people get really antsy with this because they just don't feel comfortable with that. Now, you probably need to do it, but let me tell you something. There's some people who are a little bit older, a little bit more mature, that's just something they're not going to be able to break through and certainly become this outgoing, really engaging person. Now, it's not them. If they've been working for 50 years or 40 years, they're not going to change. So what you have to learn how to do, if you're that person, you have to learn how to communicate your value, to showcase your successes, showcase your strengths, showcase your accomplishments, and do it in a way where you're confident, calm, and smiling. Okay, you don't have to bang the drums and beat your chest. Okay, but you do have to communicate. You can't just sit back and answer questions and hope that works out. Now, one of the big problems people have in interviews, they say, well, All he talked about was me, and I. And, we don't like that. He never talked about the team. And then I've heard, you know, the same employees in another interview 6 months later. All he talked about was we. He never said what he did. Okay. Let me just say this. There is no I in team. God, I got that off the table. Don't want to hear that again. I mean, I heard that so many times. It's appropriate, but it's so lame. There is no I in team. But you know what? The team is not successful unless they have a leader. So in order to win, there is an I in win. So what you say is, I may say but you have to understand that I have a lot of talent, but I surround myself with people who have talents that are better than mine in certain areas. So I look to build a team to give people more opportunity, but to also offset my weaknesses. And that's been one reason I've been very successful. Okay, when you say that, now you've cleared the air. Now you can talk about I did this and we did this, and you can move it back and forth because you have now set the tone. You've now set the boundaries for the I and we routine. And that's something people take for granted. They don't think about it, but it's a real important thing that they do. You really need to do that. Now, say it again. Your network is your net worth. For sourcing, scanning, AI is king. For resumes and cover letters, it's the devil. So don't fall back on it. You can use it as a tool to edit it a little bit, maybe wordsmith it a little bit. But if you're using it to do all your resumes and all your cover letters, anybody else that is applying for the same job using AI is probably going to have the same resume and the same cover letter. And HR people are watching for that. I mean, it's a conversation in all talent acquisition meetings now. So, it's a tool. They're using it against you, if you want to put it in those terms. They're eliminating you with algorithms that may not be always focused well enough. They may be eliminating you because your resume had a little glitch in it and the AI didn't like it, so they kicked you out. And the employer didn't know it. You didn't know it. And no HR person goes and reads the ATS logs every day. So a lot of times, even if you have friends in the organization, they won't know that you applied if you got kicked out. So, but in order to get around that, understand how ATS works and use AI, the programs, to help you, but don't let them take over. It's about you. Don't let the AI replace you. Now we talk about boosting your visibility. We go back to that point because LinkedIn is still the 900-pound gorilla in the room. Are they going to be dethroned one day? Maybe. I mean, it just stands to reason. Visibility is a must now that they're using scanners to source, and that's only going to become more prevalent because they can do it faster, cheaper. Okay, does anybody want to say in today's business climate 2 words that are going to probably be on the lips of every CEO? Faster, cheaper. Personally, I like the CEOs who say, no, AI is not going to take any jobs. It's going to make you more efficient. And then they say, we're going to have tremendous improvements in productivity and reduce our cost. Okay. How do you do that without cutting down your head count? So there's just a game of, street side money where they're, moving stuff under the shelves and trying to keep it from you. It's going to happen. If you're in a job that is administrative and you're feeding the computer, you need to stop and say, okay, I may not be long for this world. It may be next year. It may be 2 years from now, but I need to start thinking about what I'm going to do next. Don't wait till you get replaced. Don't wait for that tap on the shoulder because then it's going to be too late. Okay, so you want to be more visible on LinkedIn. That's important. And you need to stress the things that you can do. And if you're looking at, try to position yourself so that you're not on the negative side of the computer, that you're not in the computer feeding business, you're in the computer operating business. Now, some people said, I don't have a college degree. I've been doing this job for 15 years. They're telling me they're going to be bringing in more automation and our jobs are eventually going to be eliminated. What do I do? Well, what other skills do you have? Okay, you don't want to get one of these jobs that's going to be replaced someplace else. No. So think about, can I run a business? Can I buy a business? Well, I don't have that kind of money. There's so many baby boomers now trying to sell their businesses to help fund their retirement plans that they're doing a lot of ownership financing. You can offer them maybe $200,000 or $300,000 more for the business for an interest rate that maybe is half what the bank would loan you, if it's cash flowing and you've done your homework, you know that those two sides are going to work out, then you can buy a business. If you work hard and you don't make silly mistakes, you will probably be successful. Now, it's a risk, it is, but that's one way you can protect your future by having your own business. Something that's in the service industry that's not something that can be, replaced by a computer. They're not going to replace, they're not going to replace chefs. They're not going to replace people who mow the yards. They're not going to replace plumbers. They're not going to replace people who wash windows. They're not going to replace people who do landscaping. They're not going to replace, people who are really good at baking and do beautiful cakes and are artists. No, those jobs will continue to be around. And those are jobs that AI is not going to be replacing in the next 10 or 15 years. So you want to look for something. If you're in one of those, you could be replaced jobs. You want to start moving in that direction. You want to be more visible. If you're outside that outside that corridor, you want to be more visible. The standard, more than a resume, you got to display your value. So when you're working on your LinkedIn profile, look at it. Is it just telling people where you worked? That's not communicating your value. So try to put as much as you can in there. They have limits of how many words you can use and how much you can put in certain fields, but always try to be sure that it suggests that you are successful and that you've accomplished great things, and try to use specific examples within the space construct. Okay, it's got to be more than just a listing. It's got to display your value, because those scanners are going to be looking for that. You need to put industry news and comments. You see something that says, okay, this is, we've been talking about this in our organization, how this will affect us. I wanted to share it because these are questions we're all going to have answers to, something like that. Okay, that's going to get your name out there. People may see it. It's not going to form a relationship. You have to be very consistent. What does help you is when you create your own mini case studies, or you create your own content about a success. You're not there beating your chest. You're in there sharing information, how your organization solved a problem, and that you were the team leader. So that's that kind of post I'm talking about. We're not talking about, this is a professional networking site, not a place for your pets or your kids. So, at the underlying deal is you got to have a plan. And if you focus on the plan, you're going to be okay. Now, people say, I just don't have time and I've never had to do one before. Okay, let me say this again. Things are changing. Please don't get trapped in your rearview mirror. 10 years ago, great. Yeah, probably a waste of your time. But you can't manage your life looking in a rearview mirror. And that happens. That becomes a lot of people's default position. Think about this. A football team trying to win a game without a game plan, that's a disaster. Okay? A family vacation without a destination when you show up at the airport, that's a divorce. An HOA meeting with no agenda, that's outright dead bang havoc and a lot of bad language. What about career goals without an endpoint, or without points along the way where you hold yourself accountable? That is disappointing. Don't be that person who is disappointed because you're doing everything else right, but you don't have a plan. And that's kind of the icing on the cake. You have to be more visible. You have to be more intentional. You have to be more disciplined. You have to be more deliberate. You must wrap it together with a plan, because you have to do what it takes to succeed, and you have to have a sustained superior performance. I'm going to move over here just really quickly and see if we had any chats. Nope, nothing in today. This was a rescheduled session. It'll be available on YouTube later today, and on our other sites, Facebook, johngself.com, Facebook page, and on LinkedIn, the page there. It'll be up for a period of time. I hope this was helpful information. It's something we were trying to perfect the message. We're trying to understand what's happening. We're trying to make it come across in a way that really is meaningful to you. So let me recast the sort of the overarching theme for this. There are things you have to do, okay? But you have to do them in a way that you're comfortable. You have to say things in a way that makes you believable and authentic. You can't do everything the way I do it, thank God. You can't do it the same way somebody else might do it. You may not have the same confidence skills or speaking skills, but you can do a better job in managing your career. And you have to. You really have to. You just can't sit back and hope that it all works out, because it won't. When you dehumanize this process, the computers are going to make more of the initial decisions, and they're going to decide who's picked to be interviewed. Will there still be some recruiters making calls to people they know? Absolutely. But if you're looking at the vast majority of jobs, those aren't handled by recruiters. The search firms, they may be handled by corporate recruiters, and corporate recruiters are taking more and more of that business because companies are looking for ways to cut expenses and reduce turnover. Because keep in mind, one of the big dark secrets of recruiting, whether it's corporate or search firms, is that 40% of the people that are recruited outside an organization don't even last 18 months. Now, if you put pen to paper on that, what the cost is, it'll drive you into despair. It's a huge multi-million dollar number every year. So I hope this has been helpful information. I look forward to seeing you again on Tuesday. We have Career Live Friday morning, answer some questions, and we'll talk about some of the things we've talked about this week. And sometimes I repose some of the presentations because I figured out, okay, I said it this way, I can say it better, maybe it'll be more meaningful. It's not a replay, but we will answer some of your questions. So thanks very much, everybody, for coming. We appreciate you being here, and we look forward to continuing these group coaching sessions.